Hey, let's drift slowly into the mists of time, where the past unfolds like a gentle blanket around us. Breathe deeply as we journey to simpler days, where meals were made by hand and sunsets mark the rhythm of life. If you enjoy these timeless tales, don't forget to like this video, share it with friends who love history, and subscribe to the channel for more journeys into the past. Also, let me know, what time is it right now where you are? The candlelight flickers and shadows dance on ancient walls as we begin to explore what people ate in a medieval village. In the soft glow of early morning, dew clings to the thatch of humble village homes. The medieval day begins not with the harsh ring of modern alarms, but with the gentle chorus of roosters and the distant echo of the church bell. The village slowly awakens. The air carries the earthy scent of hearth fires being kindled, smoke rising in lazy spirals toward the dawn sky. In this quiet moment, before the day's labors truly begin, the first thoughts turn to food, the daily sustenance that marks the rhythm of medieval life. A woman steps out from her modest dwelling, her wooden clogs pressing into the soft earth. Her hands, weathered by years of work, gather her woolen shawl closer as she breathes in the cool morning air. The kitchen garden beside her home is a small but precious plot, a patchwork of herbs, vegetables, and medicinal plants that form the foundation of her family's daily meals. Sage and rosemary release their fragrance as her skirt brushes against them. These precious herbs will transform simple fare into something nourishing for body and spirit alike. The medieval meal bears little resemblance to our modern table. Here, food is not a convenience, but a relationship with the land, the seasons, and the community. The bread that will grace the wooden trenches today began its journey months ago, when the village plowed the common fields together, sowing wheat and rye. The woman's husband helped with that planting, walking behind the Lord's plowed animals, dropping seeds into the freshly turned earth while reciting quiet prayers for abundance. Inside the humble cottage, a cooking pot hangs above the central hearth. This pot is perhaps the most valuable possession the family owns, passed down through generations, seasoned by countless meals. It rarely empties completely. Instead, it contains an ever-evolving pottage, a thick soup of whatever vegetables are in season, grains, and occasionally small morsels of salt pork or other meat when fortune smiles upon them. The pottage simmers constantly, being topped up rather than remade, carrying flavors from one day into the next in an unbroken culinary lineage. The woman's daughter, just 8 summers old, carefully stirs this morning's pottage with a wooden spoon worn smooth by years of use. Today she adds fresh peas from the garden, their green brightness a welcome change from the winter months when the pot held little but dried beans, barley, and preserved roots. Spring has brought this gift of fresh vegetables, and the family receives it with quiet gratitude. The girl adds a handful of sorrel leaves, their lemony tang bringing lightness to the heavy mixture. Bread forms the foundation of every medieval meal, not the soft, uniform loaves we know today, but dense, hearty bread that bears witness to the soil from which it grew. The village miller has ground the grain, taking his portion as payment, and now the woman kneads the dough with practiced hands. There is wisdom in her fingertips, passed down from mother to daughter across countless generations. She knows precisely how the dough should feel, how it responds to the warmth of the small cottage, and how it changes with the seasons. The bread dough rests beneath a cloth while the woman attends to other morning tasks. Later, she will shape it into round loaves and take them to the village oven, a communal space where neighbors gather not just to bake, but to exchange news and stories. The lord of the manor maintains this oven, and villagers pay a small fee to use it, another thread in the complex web of obligations and rights that structures medieval existence. While bread and pottage form the cornerstone of the medieval diet, they are far from its entirety. Outside, in the shared pastures beyond the village, cows and goats graze on spring grass. Their milk provides precious nourishment, though rarely consumed fresh as we might today. Instead, it becomes cheese, a way of preserving the bounty of the milking season for leaner times. In a cool corner of the cottage, rounds of cheese mature on wooden shelves, their rinds developing unique local flavors from the ambient microflora of this particular place. The youngest son of the household returns from checking the family's rabbit snares set near the edge of the woodland. Today he carries a small rabbit, a rare treat that will enrich tonight's meal. Nothing of this creature will be wasted. The meat will be added sparingly to the pottage, the bones will flavor future broths, and the fur will be cured for winter, garments or trade. The boy's father shows him how to dress the animal properly, murmuring quietly, thanks to both the creature and to God for this bounty, a moment of reverence before nourishment that connects them to the cycles of life and death. Medieval. Eating follows its own gentle cadence. The largest meal typically comes at midday, when the sun is highest and workers pause in their labors. The morning begins with a simple breaking of the fast, perhaps yesterday's bread dipped in ale, which is safer to drink than water from uncertain sources. Ale in medieval times was not the strong beverage we might imagine today, but rather a lightly fermented, nutritious drink consumed by all, including children. It provides calories and hydration with just enough alcohol to purify the water used in its making. As the family members disperse to their day's activities, fields to tend, animals to care for, wool to spin, they carry with them small provisions, a chunk of bread wrapped in cloth, perhaps a bit of cheese or a dried apple from last autumn's harvest, tucked into a pouch at their waist. These simple foods sustain them through morning labors until the community gathers again at midday. So, villagers' relationship with food extends beyond their gardens and fields. The surrounding forest, though technically belonging to the Lord, provides important foraged additions to their diet. Children learn early which mushrooms are safe to gather, where the best blackberry patches can be found in late summer, and how to collect hazelnuts and acorns in the fall. The forest offers its own quiet generosity, watercress growing in clear streams, wild garlic in shady spots, and sorrel among the meadow grasses. Fish adds welcome variety to the medieval table on religious fast days, and there are many in the medieval calendar. Meat is forbidden, but fish remains permissible. The village pond, carefully maintained for generations, holds carp and pike. Along the nearby river, wicker traps gather eels, rich, fatty fish that can be smoked or salted for preservation. The right to fish certain waters belongs to the Lord, but arrangements of service or payment provide villagers with access to this precious protein source. As spring progresses to summer, the daily routine adjusts to nature's changing offerings. In the garden, peas give way to broad beans and cabbage. Early apples begin to swell on the trees that dot the village commons. The beehives, tended collectively, buzz with activity as workers gather nectar from meadow flowers. Honey is the primary sweetener in medieval cooking, used sparingly in special dishes or to brew mead for celebrations. The beekeeper approaches her charges with a mixture of respect and ritual, singing softly as she works among them in the belief that bees must be treated as members of the community, even informed of significant events like deaths or marriages. By midsummer, the village's collective attention turns toward the coming harvest. Fields of grain turn golden under the sun, each stalk representing security against winter's hunger. The Lord's steward walks the boundaries, assessing the coming yield, calculating what portion will go to the manor, what remains for the village, and what must be saved for next year's seed. This annual accounting is watched anxiously by all, for a poor harvest means hardship that no amount of careful management can fully mitigate. The harvest itself becomes a community effort of monumental proportion. Every able body participates according to age and ability, men swinging scythes in practiced rhythm, women gathering and binding sheaves, children gleaning any fallen grain. The work is exhausting, but carried out with songs and prayers that have accompanied this essential task for generations. At day's end, harvesters share a special meal in the field, brought by those too young or old to participate in the heavy labor. This meal celebrates their shared effort and mutual dependence. Bread and cheese, perhaps a special treat of fruit pies, and ale flowing more liberally than usual. Autumn brings its own particular abundance. Orchards yield apples and pears, some eaten fresh, but most preserved for winter. Families gather to press cider, the sweet juice fermenting in wooden barrels to provide drink through colder months. Nuts are gathered and dried. Mushrooms emerge in woodland clearings after autumn rains. The last vegetables are harvested from gardens before frost claims them. This is also the time of slaughter, when animals that cannot be fed through winter are butchered and their meat preserved through salting, smoking, or drying. Preservation defines the relationship between medieval people and their food. Fresh meat is a rarity, enjoyed immediately after slaughter or hunting. More commonly, meat is preserved through salt, a valuable commodity that merchants bring to village markets. Wealthy households might display elaborate salt cellars, while humbler families use this precious substance with careful economy. The process of salting pork or beef is communal, with families often sharing the labor and the salt itself, working together to prepare stores for winter. The smokehouse, a small structure set slightly apart from dwellings, plays its part in the preservation cycle. Here, hams and sausages hang in the gentle haze of smouldering hardwood, the smoke acting as both preservative and flavoring. The distinctive aroma permeates the village in late autumn, a sensory reminder of preparation for leaner times ahead. Sausage making becomes another communal activity, with recipes passed through generations, each family contributing their labor while maintaining secret spice combinations that make their particular sausages distinctive. Winter brings a shift to stored foods. The root cellar, often dug into a hillside or beneath the dwelling, keeps turnips, carrots and beets cool but frost-free. Cabbages ferment slowly into sauerkraut in wooden barrels. Onions and garlic hang in braided strings from ceiling beams. Dried beans and peas, threshed and winnowed in autumn, wait in cloth sacks. The daily pottage grows thicker and less varied, but still provides essential nourishment. The medieval winter diet may lack fresh greens, but it offers a different kind of richness. The complex flavors of fermentation, smoking, and aging that developed through necessity but created an entire culinary tradition. The medieval table itself bears little resemblance to our modern dining arrangement. In humble homes, the family might gather around the central hearth, each with a wooden bowl or trencher, a piece of stale bread that serves as both plate and additional food. Spoons carved from wood or horn are the primary utensils. Knives are carried personally rather than set at places. Forks are virtually unknown. The meal is taken in relative silence, sometimes with one member reading aloud from religious texts if the family is fortunate enough to be literate or to have such books. In contrast, the Lord's table in the manor house presents a more elaborate scene. Here, meals become displays of wealth and status. Servants bring multiple courses, beginning with light dishes like broths and salads, progressing to heavier roasted meats and pies, and concluding with sweets and spiced wines. Spices, pepper, cinnamon, cloves, nutmeg, imported at great expense from distant lands, feature prominently in the cuisine of the wealthy, used with what modern tastes might consider overwhelming abundance. The manor's kitchen operates at a scale that dwarfs village cooking. A separate building houses massive hearths where spits turn whole animals, cauldrons bubble with elaborate stews, and bakers produce not just bread, but pastries and subtleties. Decorative showpieces made from sugar and almond paste that demonstrate the skill of the kitchen staff and the wealth of the Lord. The head cook manages this domain with absolute authority, directing an army of specialists including spit boys, pastry makers, and sauce masters. Yet even with this gulf between peasant, fair and noble cuisine, certain customs transcend social boundaries. The breaking of bread holds symbolic importance across all levels of society, a literal sharing that represents community and trust. Offering bread and salt to guests grants them protection under medieval hospitality traditions. The sharing of a cup passed from hand to hand around the table reinforces bonds among those who drink from it. Religious observances shape eating patterns throughout the year. The church calendar designates fast days when meat is forbidden. Not only Fridays throughout the year, but the entire 40 days of Lent. During these times, even wealthy households turn to fish, eggs, and vegetables. The peasant diet changes, less dramatically during these periods, though the prohibition of animal products like butter and cheese presents challenges. Almond milk becomes a valuable alternative during fasting periods, and clever cooks develop substitutions that maintain the form of familiar dishes while adhering to religious restrictions. Feast days punctuate the calendar like bright threads through homespun cloth. Christmas, Easter, Saints' Days, and local celebrations each bring their own traditional foods. Special breads are shaped for specific holidays, twisted loaves for Epiphany, cross-marked buns for Good Friday. Community ovens work at full capacity before these celebrations, as women bring their special doughs. each family contributing to the collective festivity while maintaining their particular traditions. The Yule feast stands as perhaps the most anticipated meal of the year. Even in the humblest cottage, special care is taken to prepare the best food stores can provide. The Yule log burns in the hearth, and the table might hold a special treat of roasted meat, spiced ale, and perhaps a rare sweet made from dried fruits and honey. In noble households, this becomes an extravagant display. Peacocks reconstructed with their feathers after roasting, elaborate pies containing live birds that fly out when the crust is broken, and entertainers performing between courses. Medieval. Recipes rely on balance rather than precise measurement. Cooks speak of humoral properties, foods being hot or cold, wet or dry, and strive to create dishes that maintain proper balance for health. A cold food like cucumber might be served with heating herbs like pepper or ginger. This approach to cooking intertwines nutrition and medicine, with certain foods prescribed for specific ailments according to their perceived properties. These understandings pass orally from mother to daughter, from master cook to apprentice. Recipe books exist primarily in wealthy households and monasteries, where literacy allows such knowledge to be recorded. One such manuscript from a monastery kitchen includes not only cooking instructions, but notations about which preparations best suit different constitutions or seasons. A holistic approach to nourishment that considers the individual's needs and nature's cycles. Wine holds special status in the medieval world, essential for both religious sacrament and medicinal use. Monasteries maintain vineyards where possible, producing both sacramental wine and surplus for sale. In regions too cold for grapes, ale or mead takes wine's cultural position. The alewife, often a widow supporting herself through brewing, becomes an important figure in village life, her home temporarily transformed into a public house when she has fresh brew to sell, signaled by a branch or pole set above her door. Social medieval relationship with alcohol differs fundamentally from modern perspectives. Weak ale is consumed throughout the day by all ages, serving as both hydration and nutrition. Wine might be watered for daily consumption, the ability to drink. It undiluted is considered unrefined or excessive. The concept of drunkenness as sinful exists, but moderate daily consumption is normal and necessary. The monastic day often includes specific wine allowances, carefully measured to provide benefit without leading to excess. Children's diets differ little from adults, though they might receive choice morsels when available, the soft center of new bread, the first berries of summer, both out of affection and the practical recognition that growing bodies have special needs. From their earliest years, children participate in food production according to their abilities, gathering eggs, stirring pots, picking berries. Their contribution to family sustenance begins almost as soon as they can walk steadily. Meals serve as natural opportunities for teaching. A father shows his son how to hold bread correctly when cutting it, a small lesson in both safety and respect for food. A grandmother guiding her granddaughter's hands through the motions of kneading imparts not just technique, but family history embedded in that particular way of shaping the loaf. Mealtimes become informal schools where children absorb not just practical skills, but cultural values surrounding food, hospitality, and gratitude. The elderly hold special wisdom in food matters. Their memories stretch back to previous hard times. What plants proved edible during famines? Which preservation methods worked best during unusually wet years? How to adjust bread recipes when grain is scarce? This knowledge receives the respect it deserves in medieval communities where survival depends on collective adaptation to changing circumstances. When an elderly villager speaks of weather signs or storage methods, younger members listen attentively. As the medieval day draws toward evening, the village begins its gentle transition to night. The communal oven's fire dims to coals that will keep it warm until morning. Families gather for the day's final meal, simpler than midday perhaps, bread and cheese with the ever-present pottage. Spoons scrape wooden bowls in the gathering darkness. Conversation quiets as tiredness from the day's physical labor settles into bones. The precious candle or rushlight might be lit briefly for essential tasks before bedtime, but most activities wind down with the natural light. Before sleep, thanks are offered, formal prayers for those who know them, simple gratitude for others. The fundamental precariousness of medieval existence fosters genuine appreciation for each day's sustenance, regardless of its simplicity. Tomorrow's food remains perpetually uncertain, dependent on weather, health, peace, and countless factors beyond human control. This uncertainty breeds not anxiety, but a deep present moment awareness of each meal's value, each harvest's significance. In their beds of straw mattresses covered with rough linen, the village sleeps, bodies tired from labor, bellies adequately, if not abundantly filled, minds already turning toward tomorrow's meals and the work required to produce them. The ongoing cycle of planting, tending, harvesting, and preserving continues through their dreams. Their relationship with food bears none of our modern alienation. Each bite connects them directly to the soil beneath their feet, the skills in their hands, the community surrounding them, and the seasons that govern them all. As stars wheel overhead and night creatures rustle in the darkness beyond village, boundaries, cook fires bank to embers throughout the community. The collective heartbeat slows. Until dawn brings renewal and hunger once again, the village rests in the quiet knowledge that they have, for one more day, transformed sunlight and soil into nourishment through the ancient alchemy of human cultivation. Candle flickers lower now as we sink deeper into the comfort of ancient times. The night grows more enveloping, wrapping us in its gentle darkness. As your breath steadies and deepens, another story rises from the shadows. One of survival against the elements, of ingenuity born from necessity, and the quiet strength found in community. Let us drift now into the coldest nights of medieval, winters, where warmth becomes precious and wisdom essential. How medieval peasants survived the coldest nights. The medieval winter arrives not with sudden drama, but with a gradual deepening of autumn's chill. Frost patterns appear on morning grass with increasing frequency. Breath becomes visible in the pre-dawn light. The sun's arc across the sky shrinks noticeably shorter with each passing day. The peasant community watches these signs with practiced eyes, reading the approach of winter in 1,000 subtle changes that modern people might overlook. Birds gathering in particular formations, squirrels burying acorns with greater urgency, the thickening fur on livestock, the way smoke clings longer to the ground before dissipating. Preparation for winter's coldest nights begins months in advance, woven into the rhythm of the entire year. Even during midsummer's warmth, villagers collect fallen branches during their trips to the forest edge, carrying home armloads to add to carefully stacked wood piles. Children learn this habit young, rarely returning empty-handed from any woodland excursion. Each twig and branch represents future warmth, a small investment against the coming cold. As autumn deepens, this gathering intensifies. Families receive specific allotments for wood collection from the common woodland. An ancient rite carefully maintained through custom and occasional documentation. The Lord's Forester oversees these rites, ensuring no one takes more than their share or damages living trees without permission. The penalty for unauthorized tree felling can be severe, yet the rules contain nuance. Fallen wood belongs to the community. Certain trees may be coppiced, cut back to stumps to regenerate multiple new stems, providing a sustainable source of smaller branches, ideal for peasant hearths. Within each humble dwelling, preparations continue as daylight hours shorten. Women and older children work to seal drafty walls with a mixture of clay, straw, and animal dung, a simple but effective insulation applied to wattle and daub walls where summer's heat has caused cracking. Thatched roofs receive attention, with new layers added where needed before rain and snow make such work impossible. Gaps around wooden doors are stuffed with rags or moss. Each seemingly minor effort contributes to the overall goal, maintaining precious heat during the months ahead. The peasant home itself stands as a testament to generations of cold weather wisdom. Unlike the grand stone manors that remain perpetually cool, humble dwellings utilize materials chosen partly for their insulating properties. Thick thatch captures air in thousands of tiny pockets, creating natural insulation above. Walls of wattle and daub, woven sticks plastered with a mixture of clay, straw, and sometimes animal hair or dung, provide better insulation than might be expected from such simple materials. Floors of packed earth absorb and slowly release the hearth's warmth. Nothing in this design happens by accident. Each element represents centuries of accumulated knowledge about survival in challenging conditions. The central hearth forms the literal and metaphorical heart of the medieval peasant home. Unlike later chimneyless fireplaces built against walls, this earlier style places the fire in the middle of the single-room dwelling, allowing heat to radiate in all directions. Smoke rises toward a vent in the roof peak, though much of it lingers, forming a layer below the thatch. This smoky atmosphere, while uncomfortable to modern sensibilities, serves multiple purposes. It helps preserve the thatch from insects and rodents, somewhat waterproofs it from within, and most importantly, creates an insulating layer of warmer air above the living space. The hearth rarely goes completely cold from autumn to spring, banking the fire each night, covering coals with ashes to deprive them of oxygen while maintaining their heat, preserves embers until morning. This practiced art saves precious fire-starting materials and ensures warmth remains through the night. The first person awake, usually the woman of the household, gently uncovers these coals, adds kindling, and breathes the heart back to full life before others rise to face the morning chill. The sound and smell of this daily fire tending becomes one of the most comforting rhythms of medieval winter life. Fuel types vary by region and availability. Wood serves as the primary heating material where forests permit, but many communities must supplement with alternative fuels. Peat, cut from bogs during summer and dried in distinctive stacked formations, burns slowly with a distinctive sweet earthy aroma. Dried dung, particularly from cattle, forms compressed cakes for burning in regions where wood is scarce. Even dried seaweed, straw, or gorse might serve as fuel in coastal or heath areas. Medieval peasants waste nothing that might provide precious warmth. The rhythm of daily life adjusts to winter's demands and opportunities. Rising later and retiring earlier naturally aligns with shortened daylight, conserving both fuel for lighting and food energy. The coldest parts of day, early morning and late evening, become times of increased activity within the home as physical movement generates body heat. Grinding grain, spinning wool, repairing tools, and similar indoor tasks cluster during these periods, creating warmth through labor while accomplishing necessary work. Medieval clothing transforms for winter survival, layering becoming an essential strategy against the cold. Against the skin, those who can afford it wear linen, which absorbs moisture from the body. Above this, woolen tunics provide substantial insulation, even when somewhat damp. Outer layers might include additional woolen garments, or for those who can obtain them, cloaks made from felted wool or sheepskin with the fleece turned inward. The simplicity of medieval garment construction serves a practical purpose. Straight seams and uncomplicated shapes allow for easier layering and the wearing of multiple garments simultaneously. Head covering remains particularly important as medieval people understand well that uncovered heads lose substantial body heat. Women's wimples and men's coifs, close-fitting linen caps, provide a base layer, often covered with woolen hoods attached to cloaks or worn separately. These hoods bear little resemblance to our modern concepts, instead covering much of the shoulders and upper chest in addition to the head, creating a continuous barrier against the cold. For nighttime, separate sleeping caps keep heads warm while slumbering. Hands receive special attention during winter months. Mittens, more effective for warmth than fingered gloves, may be knitted from wool or sewn from leather lined with fur for those who can access such materials. Simple hand coverings made from worn clothing protect those who own nothing better. When working outdoors becomes necessary, hands are wrapped in rags or tucked into the opposite sleeve when not actively in use. The community understands intrinsically that damaged hands from frostbite mean inability to work, a potentially fatal condition in a subsistence economy. Footwear presents particular challenges in medieval winter. Leather shoes offer some protection, but require waterproofing with animal fats or oils, a process repeated regularly throughout the wet season. Wooden pattens, overshoes with raised platforms, elevate ordinary shoes above mud and slush when venturing outside. For the poorest, shoes may be simple fabric wrapped around feet and lower legs, tied in place and offering minimal protection. Wealthier peasants might possess boots reaching mid-calf, providing more substantial defense against snow and wet conditions. Inside, the home. Most remove outdoor footwear, allowing it to dry near the hearth while wearing simple cloth slippers or going barefoot on the earthen floor. Fresh rushes or straw scattered over dirt floors provide modest insulation underfoot during colder months, replaced when they become too damp or soiled. In some regions, Woven mats made from reeds or grasses serve similar purposes. Rolled out during winter and stored during warmer seasons. Sleeping arrangements undergo significant transformation during winter months. The typical medieval peasant home contains few formal beds. Instead, most family members sleep on straw-filled mattresses or simple pallets laid directly on the floor or on built-in platforms along walls. During summer, these sleeping spaces remain somewhat separate, but winter brings a strategic consolidation. Pallets move closer to the central hearth, and family members sleep closer together, sharing body warmth through the coldest nights. Privacy becomes a warm weather luxury, gladly sacrificed for survival. Bedding itself consists primarily of woolen blankets, supplemented with whatever furs, fleeces, or additional textiles the family possesses. Multiple layers of lighter coverings typically provide better insulation than single heavy ones, trapping warm air between them. Cloaks and day clothing often double as additional bedding, with outer garments laid over blankets for added warmth. Straw mattresses receive extra stuffing before winter, creating thicker barriers between sleeping bodies and the cold ground beneath. On the coldest nights, when bitter winds find every crack and frost forms intricate patterns inside shuttered windows, additional measures come into play. Heated stones, warmed in the evening fire, then wrapped in rags, move to the foot of bedding, where they radiate heat for hours. Family members take turns adding wood to the banked fire through the night. The elderly, the very young, and pregnant. Women, those most vulnerable to cold, receive central sleeping positions where warmth concentrates. Animals play crucial roles in winter survival within peasant communities. The most fortunate households share their living spaces with livestock during the coldest periods, an arrangement driven by practicality rather than sentiment. A cow or several sheep brought inside overnight generate significant body heat while simultaneously being protected from freezing temperatures. The resulting environment would strike modern sensibilities as unpleasant: close quarters, animal odors, and inevitable waste. But the additional warmth often means survival during freezing periods. Even smaller animals contribute to the household's winter warmth. Chickens roost in indoor spaces where their collective body heat serves human needs, while protecting the valuable birds from predators and freezing. Cats, kept primarily for rodent control, become welcome sleeping companions on winter nights, their warm bodies curled against human necks or alongside children. Dogs move from their usual outdoor guardian positions to sleep near the hearth, adding their warmth to the family circle. Winter diet adapts to serve the increased caloric needs of cold weather survival. The pottage that simmers perpetually in the cooking pot grows richer and thicker, with additional barley or beans providing sustenance that generates internal warmth. More fat enters the diet when available. Precious drippings from rare meat might be added to vegetable pottage, or a bit of saved bacon rendered to enrich otherwise plain fare. The body's need for additional calories during cold weather is instinctively understood, though never fully satisfied in most peasant households. Hot drinks become particularly important during winter evenings. Ale warmed by the fire with a heated poker might receive additions of honey and saved apple slices, creating a simple but comforting beverage shared before sleep. Herbal infusions, especially those made from evergreen herbs still accessible during winter, provide warming drinks with slight medicinal properties. Even heated water with a small amount of precious honey brings comfort on the coldest days. Warming hands through wooden cups before warming bodies from within. The medieval understanding of cold includes awareness of its dangers beyond mere discomfort. Village wisdom passes down specific knowledge about frostbite's warning signs, the dangerous progression from painful extremities to alarming numbness. Those showing such symptoms receive immediate attention. Hands placed in companions' armpits, feet wrapped in warm cloths, snow rubbed vigorously against affected areas in a practice whose effectiveness modern medicine later confirmed. Hypothermia's subtle progression receives equal vigilance, with community members watching for unusual confusion or drowsiness in those exposed to extended cold. Winter illnesses generate their own body of folk medicine and preventative practices. Respiratory complaints, common in smoke-filled dwellings during winter confinement, receive treatments of specific herbal preparations. Horehound, coltsfoot, and thyme steeped in hot water create soothing remedies for coughs. Poultices of mustard provide chest relief. Vulnerability to winter illness prompts increased consumption of preserved foods, believed to strengthen resistance. Garlic and onions feature prominently in winter cooking for both flavor and perceived protective qualities. The shortest days, those surrounding the winter solstice, bring both particular challenges and unique communal responses. With darkness falling by mid-afternoon and lasting until late morning, the hours of potential cold and darkness stretch human endurance. Yet this period also marks important celebrations that break winter's psychological weight. The Yule log, specially selected massive log designed to burn slowly for the entire 12 days of Christmas, provides practical extended warmth while symbolizing continuity through the darkest period. The tradition of bringing evergreens indoors introduces rare spots of color and life into winter-bound homes, while reinforcing connections to eventual renewal. Community becomes perhaps the most essential survival resource during medieval winters. No single household could accumulate sufficient resources or knowledge to survive truly harsh conditions in isolation. Instead, interdependence becomes the crucial strategy. Wood gathering expeditions involve multiple families, allowing more efficient collection and transportation of heavy loads. Hunting parties combine skills and knowledge of winter animal patterns. Food preservation, fire maintenance, and cold weather construction all benefit from collective wisdom and shared labor. This communal approach extends to living arrangements during extreme weather. When blizzard conditions make movement between buildings dangerous, multiple families might consolidate temporarily in whichever dwelling proves most weather resistant. The elderly who live alone receive particular attention, with younger villagers checking regularly to ensure their fires remain adequate and their provisions sufficient. Children sometimes rotate between households, distributing the burden of feeding extra mouths while ensuring all receive adequate care. The church building often serves as emergency shelter during the most severe weather events. Its stone walls, while poorly insulated, provide better protection from howling winds than peasant dwellings. When properly prepared with additional rushes on stone floors, banked fires in braziers, and the collective body heat of the community, these spaces can sustain life through the worst conditions. The parish priest or local monastery might open granaries during such emergencies, providing supplemental food from stored tithes to prevent starvation when individual supplies run low. Winter evenings, by necessity longer than summer ones, develop their own cultural practices that simultaneously conserve resources and maintain community bonds. Storytelling flourishes in these extended hours of firelight. Legends, family histories, and practical knowledge all transmit through oral tradition, while requiring no additional fuel beyond the necessary heating fire. Simple music from pipes or drums accompanies these tales, sometimes inspiring quiet dancing that generates welcome warmth through movement. Handwork fills many winter hours, tasks specifically saved for the season when outdoor labor diminishes. By the hearth's light, women spin wool into thread and weave, or knit it into essential garments. Men carve wooden implements or repair summer tools by firelight. Children learn these skills through observation and gradually increasing participation. The creation of necessary items comes with minimal resource expenditure. The same fire that heats the dwelling provides light for productive activity, and the resulting goods contribute directly to cold weather survival. Games requiring minimal equipment occupy hours that might otherwise fill with hunger or cold awareness. Chess pieces carved from available materials, dice made from knuckle bones, or simple board games scratched into wood or played on cloth provoke strategic thinking and fellowship with zero additional resource cost. These activities serve as more than mere distractions. They maintain mental acuity during physically constraining times and reinforce social bonds essential to community survival. Winter also creates unexpected opportunities amid its challenges. Frozen rivers and lakes, dangerous in one context, become efficient transportation routes in another. Sleds allow movement of goods with less effort than summer methods require. The particular quiet of snow-covered landscapes allows sound to carry farther, making communication between distant workers possible when visual contact disappears in swirling snow. Even the shortest day length offers certain advantages. Extended darkness means extended sleep, conserving calories when food supplies dwindle. The relationship with winter among medieval peasants carries more nuance than simple endurance. While hardship remains undeniable, the season also brings certain rhythms impossible during busy growing months. Family connections deepen during enforced proximity around the hearth. Craft skills develop during hours dedicated to indoor creation. Community interdependence strengthens through mutual aid. The medieval winter, for all its dangers, contains its own particular forms of richness. Special winter knowledge passes carefully between generations, particular ways of predicting weather, changes recognizing cloud patterns or animal behaviors. Children learn to read the different qualities of snow, which can safely bear weight, which signals warming air, which indicates more to come. They observe how adults adjust fire tending techniques for different wind conditions, how they position sleeping areas to maximize heat retention, and how they prepare for winter storms when certain signs appear. This specialized knowledge, rarely written but carefully preserved through demonstration and practice, forms an essential survival inheritance. Medieval peasants develop intimate familiarity with their local environments that modern people can scarcely imagine. They know precisely which slopes receive last light on winter evenings, making them slightly warmer for gathering late firewood. They recognize which trees best block prevailing winds, providing micro-shelters during necessary outdoor winter work. They understand which parts of frozen ponds freeze most solidly, and which remain dangerously thin despite appearances. This environmental literacy becomes particularly valuable during winter months when margins for error shrink dramatically. The end of winter arrives with similar subtlety to its beginning. Gradual shifts noticed by those attuned to natural signals. The particular quality of sunlight changes before actual warmth increases. Certain birds return or change their songs. Willow branches develop a specific flexibility and subtle color change. The community watches these indicators carefully, knowing that false springs frequently interrupt genuine warming. Firewood supplies receive continued careful management, even as days lengthen, as experienced villagers understand that winter often makes final bitter appearances well into periods modern calendars would label as spring. When true spring, finally, establishes itself, winter preparations begin again almost immediately. The cycle never truly breaks. Summer berry picking yields not only immediate food, but leaves for drying for winter tea. Summer thatching creates not only current shelter, but ensures winter insulation. The gathering of autumn nuts provides food, but also yields shells for winter fire kindling. Medieval life exists in a continuous cycle of preparation and use, storage and consumption, each season laying groundwork for survival in others. As winter memories fade with warming days, the community conducts informal assessment of its performance. Families who weathered the cold with particular success share techniques with neighbors. Those who struggled receive additional support and guidance for future preparation. The collective knowledge adapts based on each winter's particular challenges, unusual weather patterns, unexpected food shortages, or surprisingly effective new methods all enter the community wisdom that will inform the next winter's approach. The material reality of medieval winter survival leaves little room for romantic notions. Cold weather deaths occur with sobering regularity, particularly among the elderly, the very young, and the already ill. Famine becomes most dangerous during late winter when stored food dwindles, but new growth has not yet appeared. Accidents from ice, falling wood, or fire happen more frequently when people remain confined in close quarters with open flames. The community acknowledges these losses with appropriate gravity while continuing the essential work of survival. Yet within this harsh reality exists remarkable human adaptability and resilience. Generation after generation develops increasingly refined techniques for maximizing warmth from minimal resources. Communities establish careful balances between individual household needs and collective welfare. Traditional knowledge combines with experiential learning to create continuously evolving survival strategies. The medieval approach to winter demonstrates extraordinary human capacity to adapt to challenging environments through observation, experimentation, cooperation, and cultural transmission. When we examine medieval winter survival without modern preconceptions, we find neither helpless suffering nor idyllic simplicity, but rather a complex, sophisticated set of adaptations developed through centuries of direct environmental engagement. These ancestors, working without scientific terminology or standardized measurements, nevertheless created remarkably effective systems for maintaining human life through conditions that would challenge even modern infrastructure. As darkness falls on a winter night in the medieval village, the scene appears deceptively simple. Families gathered around hearth fires, wrapped in woolen blankets, sharing stories while wind whistles through thatch above. Yet this tableau represents the culmination of countless careful decisions and accumulated wisdom. The strategic banking of specific fuels to last through night hours, the deliberate placement of sleeping bodies to maximize shared warmth, the careful orientation of the dwelling itself to mitigate prevailing winds, the communal agreements that ensured sufficient resources for all. The medieval peasant's relationship with winter exists as neither passive endurance nor hopeless struggle, but as active, creative engagement with environmental reality. They meet cold's challenge not with surrender or complaint, but with community solidarity, careful preparation, and remarkable ingenuity. Their success, measured simply in survival through countless winters across centuries, testifies to the effectiveness of their approaches and the wisdom embedded in their seemingly simple practices. As spring finally returns to the medieval landscape, the community emerges from winter's constraints with renewed appreciation for warmth and growth. The first fresh greens taste particularly sweet after months of stored provisions. The ability to move freely without heavy layers feels like liberation. Work expands beyond the confines of smoky interiors into sunlit fields. Yet even amid spring's abundance, the knowledge of winter's inevitable return remains present. Wood gathering continues. Food preservation begins again. The eternal cycle of preparation maintains its quiet rhythm beneath more immediate seasonal concerns. In the medieval understanding, winter never truly ends, but merely retreats temporarily. Its presence shapes decisions made during every season, determining crop choices, building methods, clothing production, and food preservation. The cold season exists not as an aberration, but as an integral component of the annual cycle, demanding respect and preparation rather than resistance or resentment. This perspective, accepting natural cycles while developing sophisticated adaptations to their challenges, represents perhaps the most profound wisdom in the medieval approach to winter survival. As the last snow melts from shaded hollows and the first fruit trees blossom, the village turns its collective attention towards spring tasks. But the lessons of winter, resourcefulness, community interdependence, careful management of limited resources, and deep environmental knowledge continue to influence every aspect of daily life. These qualities, honed through countless cold seasons, define not just winter survival strategies, but the entire medieval approach to existence in a world where security remains perpetually provisional and community provides the surest foundation for individual welfare. The air grows still and heavy with memory as our journey deepens into the medieval world. The whispers of those who came before us grow more intimate now, their hands guiding our imagination through the ancient rhythms of craft and creation. Let your mind drift to the steady rhythm of hammer on anvil, to the dance of sparks in darkness, to the transformative power of fire and iron. In this next dreamlike passage, we enter a life both ordinary and extraordinary, the daily existence of those who shaped metal into necessity and art. Your life as a blacksmith in 1300, the day begins before first light. Always, it begins this way. Your consciousness rises slowly from dreams filled with the ring of metal and the hiss of cooling iron. For a moment, lying on your straw mattress with rough woolen blankets pulled tight against the morning chill. You exist between two worlds, the fading realm of sleep and the tangible world that awaits your hands. Your body knows the hour even before your mind fully wakes. Years of practice have embedded the rhythm of days into your very muscles. The small window of your sleeping chamber, covered with oiled parchment rather than glass, reveals only that night has not yet fully released its hold on the world. Your wife stirs beside you, her breathing changing as she too prepares to meet the day. Neither of you speaks. These first movements happen in a shared silence born of long familiarity. In the corner of the room, your youngest child sleeps on, small, chest rising and falling with the deep breaths of childhood, untroubled by the approaching demands of the day. Your feet find the cool earthen floor, and you reach for the clothing laid out the previous evening. Linen undergarments first, soft against your skin from years of washing. Over this, woolen leggings tied with a simple cord at the waist, a linen shirt, once white, but now bearing the permanent shadows of your trade, smoke stains that no amount of scrubbing can fully remove. The heavy woolen tunic last, dyed a deep blue, when new, but now faded to a color that defies simple naming. Your wife has mended it numerous times, patches covering patches in some places, evidence of sparks that escaped your vigilance over years of work. You move quietly through the main room of your home. It is larger and better constructed than most dwellings in the village, a testament to both your essential trade and the modest prosperity it has brought. Two older children sleep on pallets near the central hearth where embers still glow faintly from the previous evening's fire. Your elder son stirs as you pass, 11 years old and already beginning to learn the fundamentals of your craft. His eyes open, meeting yours in silent question. You nod once. Yes, he should rise and join. You soon. Outside, the eastern sky shows the first faint lightning that precedes dawn. The air carries autumn's distinct chill, promising a clear day ahead. Your breath forms visible clouds as you cross the small yard to the workshop that stands separate from your living quarters. This separation is both practical and mandated. The ever-present risk of fire from your forge means the village requires this distance between your work and other structures. The smith's home may burn, but the village must not burn with it. The workshop door creaks slightly as you push it open. The familiar smells greet you immediately. Cold iron, charcoal, the lingering traces of hot metal and quenching water from yesterday's work. The earthy scent of the clay floor, often dampened to reduce fire risk. Even in darkness, you navigate this space with unconscious precision. Your hands find the flint and steel by touch, and with practiced movements, you strike sparks onto prepared tinder. A small flame catches, and you transfer it carefully to a rush light, illuminating the workshop in soft, flickering light. The forge stands at the center of your world, a solidly built hearth of stone and clay rising waist high, its firebox lined with special imported bricks that withstand extreme temperatures. Beside it sits the quenching trough, filled with water that reflects the growing light. Your anvil, perhaps your most valuable possession, waits on its sturdy oak block. This anvil came from your master, who received it from his master before him. The face bears countless tiny marks from decades of use, each dent and scratch representing knowledge passed through generations. first tasks are always the same. You check the bellows, large leather lungs that force air into the forge, ensuring the leather remains supple and the wooden frame sound. You arrange the charcoal carefully in the forge, building it with the precision that only experience provides. Not too compact to prevent airflow, not too loose to waste precious fuel. The charcoal itself represents significant investment, specially made by colliers who burn wood in carefully controlled conditions to create fuel that burns hotter and cleaner than ordinary wood. When your son enters, still blinking sleep from his eyes, you nod toward the bellows. Without need for instruction, he takes his position and begins the steady rhythm of pumping that will bring the forge to life. His young arms tire quickly with this task, but his endurance grows with each passing season. You strike a light directly to the charcoal and watch as the bellow's breath transforms the first small flames into the beginnings of the intense heat your work requires. While the forge awakens, you move to the small workbench where yesterday's projects wait. The manor steward commissioned new hinges for the church door, a prestigious assignment that will be seen by all, including visiting nobles. The iron for this project came at significant cost, some of it imported from distant regions known for superior ore. You have shaped the main straps already, but the decorative ends require final detailing work this morning, while the iron remains workable. Your apprentice arrives as the eastern sky turns golden. A boy of 14, son of the village baker, he has been under your instruction for 2 years now. His hands already show the distinctive calluses of the craft, and burns have left their permanent marks on his forearms. He mumbles a greeting and immediately begins the morning's preparatory tasks without needing direction, checking tool arrangements, clearing debris from yesterday's work, retrieving the partly finished pieces that require completion today. The day's first real light reveals the full space of your workshop. Tools hang on the walls in careful arrangement. Hammers of various sizes and shapes, each designed for specific purposes. Tongs with different jaw configurations for holding metal of various dimensions. Punches, drifts, and chisels for creating holes and textures. Hardy tools that fit into the anvil's square hole to extend its capabilities. Each tool represents a significant investment, many made by your own hand over years of practice, others inherited from your master or acquired through careful trade. The forge now glows with sufficient heat for the day's first work. You select a rod of iron destined to become a knife blade for the butcher, who trades your choice cuts for your services. The metal disappears into the forge's heart, where it will remain until it reaches the precise color that experience has taught you, signals proper working temperature. Meanwhile, you explain to your son and apprentice the day's planned work, assigning preliminary tasks to each based on their developing skills and the urgency of various commissions. When the iron glows a bright orange-yellow, you extract it with tongs and move swiftly to the anvil. The first hammer blow rings out across the still waking village, a sound so familiar to all that few consciously notice it anymore. The rhythm of your strikes follows patterns learned through years of practice, each blow deliberate and precisely placed. Between strikes, you rotate the metal, ensuring even working. Occasionally, you return it to the forge when the color dulls, indicating dropping temperature that would make the metal less workable. Your son watches intently, absorbing knowledge. that transcends simple words. In this craft, understanding comes through observation, through feeling how metal responds to heat and force, through recognizing the subtle color changes that indicate precise temperatures, through developing an intuitive sense of when to strike and when to pause. Some apprentices learn quickly, their bodies seeming to remember skills their conscious minds have never known. Others struggle longer, requiring patient repetition before movements become natural. The morning progresses with steady work. Villagers begin to appear with various needs. The miller requires a new band for his grinding stone. A farmer brings a broken plough blade that must be repaired before the day's fieldwork can continue. The carpenter needs specialized nails for a timber frame construction. Each interruption requires assessment, negotiation of payment, often in goods rather than coin, and decisions about work priority. Your wife appears mid-morning with a wooden bowl of pottage, a thick porridge of barley and vegetables with small pieces of salt pork providing flavor and sustenance. You eat quickly, standing beside the forge, the familiar taste barely registering as your mind remains occupied with the mental calculations of the day's projects. The apprentice and your son take their turn with the food afterward, their youthful hunger evident in how quickly the bowl empties. The most challenging work you save for when your energy remains highest. Today, this means the decorative elements of the church hinges, curling tendrils of iron that must appear delicate despite their essential strength. You heat a section of strap end to precise temperature and use specialized hammers to draw out the metal into progressively thinner strips. These you then curl around a form, creating spirals that taper to elegant points. The work requires complete concentration. One error in judgment about metal temperature or one misplaced hammer strike could ruin days of previous effort. Your apprentice demonstrates increasing skill by tackling the simpler repair work under your periodic supervision. The plough blade presents straightforward challenges: heating to remove work hardening, hammering back to proper shape, and carefully quenching to restore necessary hardness without creating brittleness. You observe his hammer technique with a critical eye, occasionally offering terse guidance, more angle on that strike, or return to the fire now. The minimal instruction typical of craft training, where doing consistently matters more than explaining exhaustively. Midday brings the heaviest heat in the workshop. Summer may have faded into autumn outside, but here beside the forge, sweat runs freely down your face and back. You remove your outer tunic, working in a linen shirt darkened with moisture. The constant proximity to extreme temperatures has weathered your skin over decades, giving it a leathery quality that distinguishes smiths from other craftsmen. Fine scars mark your hands and forearms, permanent records of moments when attention lapsed or metal behaved unpredictably. The regular customers know to approach with respect, waiting for natural pauses in your work rather than interrupting concentrated effort. Others sometimes require subtle education in these unwritten rules. When the Lord's new huntsman bursts in demanding immediate attention for his damaged spear point, your silence and steady continuation of the current task eventually communicates the proper protocol. He waits, gradually understanding that even the manner's needs must accommodate the realities of working hot metal. Working with iron offers little forgiveness for wandering attention or imprecise movement, unlike the carpenter who can pause mid-saw stroke, or the potter who can re-wet clay that dries too quickly. The blacksmith operates in a realm where metal must be worked within specific heat ranges, where opportunities cannot be recovered once, lost, where each hammer strike permanently alters the material. This intensity demands complete presence in each moment, a meditation of focus that, while exhausting, also provides deep satisfaction unavailable in less immediate crafts. By mid-afternoon, the church hinges near completion. You use small punches to create decorative impressions along the main straps, careful to maintain consistent spacing and depth. This final detailing transforms functional objects into displays of craftsmanship that will silently represent your skill to generations of villagers and visitors. Though few will consciously notice the precise uniformity of the spiral curls or the perfectly aligned punch marks, these details separate mere competent work from mastery. Your body registers the day's toll with increasing clarity as afternoon progresses. Shoulders ache from countless hammer swings. Lower back tightens from hours of leaning over the anvil. Eyes burn slightly from constant focus on glowing metal and exposure to smoke. Yet your hands remain steady, guided by muscle memory, developed through decades of daily practice. The pain exists not as an intrusion, but as a familiar companion to productive effort, the natural consequence of transforming unyielding material through persistent will. The village children begin to gather near your workshop as their daily tasks conclude. They watch from a respectful distance, fascinated by the transformation of dull metal into useful tools through mysterious intervention of fire and force. Occasionally, you allow them to pump the bellows briefly under supervision, their excitement palpable at this brief participation in adult work. Some will eventually become apprentices to you if your own sons show insufficient aptitude or interest, or to other smiths in neighboring villages if local need exceeds your capacity to supply. Late afternoon brings the manor steward to inspect the finished church hinges. His critical eye examines each detail, checking overall dimensions against the wooden template provided earlier. He tests the movement of the pivot rings, verifies the mounting hole placement, and finally nods approval. Though payment was negotiated previously, final quality determines whether future commissions will follow. The steward's satisfaction guarantees continued work from the manor, crucial for maintaining your position in the community's delicate economic balance. As daylight begins to fade, you assign your apprentice and son the task of banking the forge, fire, reducing it without extinguishing it completely, preserving precious coals for tomorrow's rekindling. They cover the remaining charcoal with a layer of ash, creating a smoldering mass that conserves both heat and fuel overnight. This technique, passed down through generations of smiths, represents the practical wisdom embedded in seemingly simple daily routines. Tools receive final attention before day's end. Each implement returns to its designated place on the wall or in wooden chests. Your most specialized tools, the ones created by your own hand for particular purposes, receive brief inspection for signs of wear or damage. Handles are checked, edges examined, any necessary maintenance noted for future attention. The organization of the workshop reflects deeper principles of the craft. Order creates efficiency, care extends tool life, preparation enables quality work. Outside, twilight softens the village outlines as smoke from cooking fires rises from thatched roofs. Your body carries the forge's heat with it as you cross the yard toward home, where the evening meal awaits. Your wife has prepared a stew enhanced by vegetables from your garden, larger and better tended than most villagers' plots due to your ability to trade ironwork for manure, seeds, and occasional labor. The relative prosperity of your household becomes visible in these small advantages. Slightly more varied food, somewhat sturdier construction, modest luxuries, like the carved wooden spoons your family uses rather than the simple whittled ones found in poorer homes. The evening meal provides the day's only opportunity for extended family conversation. Your oldest daughter reports on her weaving progress under the guidance of a neighboring craftswoman. Your son describes a technique breakthrough in his hammer control. Your wife shares news gathered during her midday trip to draw water. Gossip about approaching marriages, concerns about early frost signs, updates on the parish priest's ongoing conflict with the manor steward. This exchange of information maintains family cohesion and situates your household within the community's social fabric. After eating, you move to the bench near the hearth for the day's final task, record keeping. Unlike many villagers, you maintain basic literacy, not from formal education but from practical necessity. In a small bound volume, you note materials used, work completed, payments received or promised, and outstanding commissions. The careful tracking of these details protects your livelihood in a world where memory alone proves insufficient for managing increasingly complex economic relationships. Some evenings include additional work, small projects requiring minimal heat that can be accomplished at the household hearth rather than the main forge. Tonight, you work on lock mechanisms for a merchant who commissioned secure storage chests. The delicate components require patience and precision rather than strength, offering different challenges from daytime work. Your youngest children watch with fascination as tiny pieces of metal become intricate mechanisms under your careful hands. Physical fatigue eventually overcomes even the most dedicated craftsman. When your eyes grow heavy and fingers less precise, you set aside the remaining work. Your wife has already prepared sleeping pallets, banking the household fire in the same careful manner your apprentice managed at the forge. The youngest children receive brief stories, tales that often feature legendary smiths like Wayland or biblical craftsmen like Tubal-Cain, narratives that connect current work to ancient traditions and imbue daily labor with deeper significance. Before sleep claims you completely, your mind reviews tomorrow's work, prioritizing tasks, anticipating material needs, planning sequential operations for efficiency. The rhythmic organization of time becomes as important as the organization of physical space, each project interlocking with others in complex patterns that maximize productive output, while accommodating the realities of forge temperatures, material, limitations, and human endurance. Morning arrives again before full light. The cycle continues without interruption, an existence defined by the transformative relationship between human skill and elemental materials. Yet within this, apparently, repetitive structure exists continuous variety. Each day presents unique challenges in the form of different repairs, new commissions, material variations, and developing apprentice capabilities. The blacksmith's life embodies paradoxical stability, consistent in overall pattern while constantly adapting to changing conditions. The village market day brings different rhythms to your workshop. Farmers from outlying areas bring tools needing repair before the return journey home. Travelers passing through present unusual items from distant regions. Sometimes objects to fix, occasionally exotic materials to purchase when funds allow. The wider world briefly touches your otherwise localized existence through these interactions, bringing awareness of developing techniques or different regional styles that occasionally influence your own approach. Your professional knowledge extends far beyond simple hammering. Years of experience have taught you the distinctive properties of metals from different sources, which iron holds an edge better for cutting tools, which remains more flexible for items requiring spring tension, which resists rust more effectively for outdoor applications. You understand how various fuels affect forge temperature and atmosphere, how different quenching mediums create specific material properties, how work hardening and annealing alter internal grain structures, even when these concepts lack formal names in your vocabulary. The seasonal cycle shapes your work as profoundly as the daily pattern. Spring brings increased agricultural tool repair as planting begins. Summer sees focus on building hardware as construction weather improves. Autumn demands preparation of food processing equipment for harvest and preservation. Winter allows time for more specialized projects, decorative items, complex mechanisms, tool production for your own use. These seasonal shifts provide natural variety within the smith's annual experience, preventing the monotony that might otherwise accompany repetitive physical labor. Your craft connects you to trade networks extending far beyond the village boundaries. The iron itself arrives through merchants who source it from specialized smelting operations many days' journey distant. Charcoal comes from colliers working in managed woodland areas. Specialized tools might be purchased from traveling sellers at regional fairs. This dependency on external supply chains creates vulnerability, but also connects your isolated community to broader economic systems that provide stability through diversity. Unlike many villages whose work remains largely invisible once completed, the baker's bread consumed, the thatcher's roof blending into the overall structure, your creations maintain visible presence throughout the community for generations. Door hinges, candle holders, cooking pots, weapon fittings, and countless other objects bear your distinctive maker's mark. A simple geometric pattern struck into the cooling metal that identifies your work long after your hands have stilled. This persistent legacy provides profound satisfaction that compensates for the physical demands of the trade. The relationship between smith and community transcends simple economic exchange. Your specialized knowledge makes you witness to private moments. The farmer quietly requesting repair of a cherished tool inherited from his father. The young man commissioning special hooks for a marriage bed being prepared in secret. The widow bringing her late husband's knife for reshaping into a smaller implement her hands can manage. These interactions position you as both craftsman and confidant, trusted with practical needs and personal transitions alike. Religious observances interlace with your work in numerous ways. The church calendar dictates when certain activities can occur. Major forge work ceases on Sundays and significant holy days. Yet emergency repairs receive accommodation even within these restrictions, acknowledgement of the smith's essential community role. You craft items for religious use, processional crosses, altar fittings, decorative elements for church furnishings, work that carries spiritual significance beyond its material function. Guild relationships, while less formal than in larger towns, still influence your practice. Occasional meetings with smiths from neighboring villages provide opportunities to share techniques, discuss material sources, establish fair pricing, and maintain quality standards. These relationships simultaneously involve cooperation and competition. Shared professional identity balanced against the need to protect specialized knowledge that provides marketplace advantage. The tension between openness and secrecy creates careful calculation about which techniques to demonstrate freely and which to guard more carefully. The transmission of knowledge to the next generation occupies increasing attention as your own. Strength begins its inevitable decline. Your eldest son shows promising aptitude, his hammer control developing remarkable precision for his age. The apprentice progresses steadily through increasingly complex tasks. Teaching becomes intuitive rather than systematic. Corrections offered precisely when needed. Demonstrations provided at key learning moments. Approval expressed through expanded responsibility rather than verbal praise. The craft passes forward, not as an abstract concept, but as embodied practice. Health concerns follow predictable patterns for those in your trade. Eyes suffer from years of focusing on bright metal in dim surroundings. Lungs labor under constant exposure to smoke and metal particles. Joints protest the repetitive strains of hammering and lifting. Burns, both minor and severe, accumulate over decades despite precautions. Yet the trade also builds extraordinary physical capability. Forearm strength that becomes legendary, heat tolerance that amazes others, precise control of powerful movements. That seems almost supernatural to observers. Your relationship with fire exists on multiple levels: practical, symbolic, almost spiritual. At the practical level, you read flame colors and behavior with expert precision, adjusting airflow and fuel placement to achieve specific heats for particular operations. Symbolically, your mastery of this elemental force positions you somewhat apart in the community imagination, someone who daily handles what others fear. On deeper levels, the transformative interaction between fire and material mirrors, philosophical and religious concepts of purification and fundamental change that occasionally surface in quiet moments of contemplation. Innovation occurs not through dramatic breakthroughs, but through subtle incremental improvements to existing methods. You discover that adding a particular river clay to the forge lining extends its life significantly. A slightly modified hammer shape proves more efficient for specific operations. A new arrangement of tools reduces wasted movement during complex procedures. These small adjustments, accumulated over decades and passed to apprentices, gradually refine the craft without disrupting its essential continuity with past practice. The rhythm of the forge influences your perception of time itself. While agricultural work follows natural daylight and seasonal progression, the smith's time centers on the forge cycle: heating, working, cooling, repeated countless times each day. This creates a distinctive temporal experience where external hours matter less than material readiness. Metal dictates the appropriate moment for action based on its color and malleability, rather than the position of the sun or the ringing of church bells. Your awareness of the village's economic condition exceeds that of most residents. Through repair requests, tool commissions, and payment negotiations, You gauge the relative prosperity of individual households and the community overall. Years of drought appear in your workshop as increased repair rather than replacement, as creative payment arrangements, as carefully calculated decisions about which tools receive priority attention. This economic barometer function provides valuable insight for managing your own household resources through fluctuating conditions. Dreams often continue the day's work, your sleeping mind-solving problems encountered during waking hours. You might wake with sudden clarity about a challenging joint construction or an efficient sequence for completing a complex piece. This unconscious continuation of craft thinking represents the complete integration of professional identity with personal existence. The smith remains smith even in sleep. The boundary between person and practice dissolved through decades of daily immersion. The workshop itself holds significance beyond its practical function. Its walls have absorbed smoke from thousands of fires. Its floor bears the weight-worn depressions where generations of smiths have stood in precisely the same positions. Its very air carries the distinctive scent produced by specific combinations of materials and processes unique to this particular place. When you enter each morning, you join not just a trade, but a lineage, becoming a momentary current expression of knowledge accumulated through countless lives dedicated to the transformation of metal. As shadows lengthen on another day of work, you examine a completed door latch, a simple design executed with the unconscious precision that comes from having created hundreds of similar items over decades. The metal has cooled to reveal the distinctive color and texture that characterizes your work, distinguishable from that of other smiths by subtle qualities difficult to articulate but immediately recognizable to experienced eyes. Your makers, Mark, struck while the metal remained workable, will identify this as your creation long after memory of its making fades. Evening brings the familiar progression toward rest. Tools arranged, fire banked, bodies accumulated tension acknowledged, as the price of the day's transformation of material into useful form. Tomorrow will bring its own particular challenges and satisfactions within the containing rhythm of the craft that has shaped your life since apprenticeship. The constancy provides not limitation, but foundation, a secure structure within which creativity and mastery find expression through the conversation between human intention and elemental material. This is your life as a blacksmith, hands that bear permanent witness to daily negotiation between will and resistance, mind filled with knowledge that exists more in muscle memory than conscious thought. Identity forged through thousands of heating and cooling cycles that have gradually transformed you as surely as they transform the metal you shape. In 1300, in a world where most objects begin as direct extension of human effort rather than distant industrial process, your work forms essential connections throughout the community, linking households to each other, connecting daily life to ancient knowledge, binding present necessity to enduring function through the transformative power of fire and skill. The night has grown deep now, the candle burning low, its flame barely disturbing the darkness that envelops us. As your breathing slows and your thoughts grow distant, one final medieval whisper remains to be heard. It comes not as judgment, but as gentle illumination of a world so different from our own. A world where comfort was rare, where survival demanded knowledge now forgotten, where each day presented challenges we can scarcely imagine. Let us drift now into this final contemplation of medieval reality. Why you wouldn't last a day in medieval times. The transition begins slowly, imperceptibly. Your consciousness drifts backward through centuries, through layers of technological development and social change, settling finally in a world both familiar and utterly foreign. The medieval village materializes around you not as the romanticized vision of tournament pageantry or noble courts, but as the living, breathing reality experienced by the vast majority of people in the 13th century. The air itself feels different here, thicker somehow, carrying unfamiliar scents that immediately signal your displacement from everything known and comfortable. Dawn arrives without artificial announcement. No alarm disturbs the natural transition from darkness to first light. Instead, the crowing of roosters and the stirring of livestock create a gentle crescendo that pulls sleepers from their rest. Your body, accustomed to controlled temperatures and cushioned support, registers immediate complaints about the sleeping surface. A straw-filled mattress laid across rope supports, offering minimal protection from the uneven wooden frame beneath. Your back aches from accommodating these unfamiliar contours through the night. The thin woolen blanket provided little warmth against the persistent chill that pervades the sleeping space. As awareness expands, other sensations demand attention. The air carries a complex mixture of odors. Wood smoke from banked fires, rekindling throughout the village. The earthy smell of livestock kept in close proximity to human dwellings. The distinctive scent of straw dampened by morning dew. The yeasty aroma of bread dough rising in nearby homes. Your modern sensibilities might categorize many of these smells as unpleasant, yet they form the unremarkable olfactory background of medieval existence. Neither good nor bad, but simply present. The sensory texture of everyday life. The first challenge arrives with immediate physical needs. Nature's call requires attention, but the familiar bathroom fixtures exist nowhere in this world. Instead, a simple bucket in the corner serves immediate needs within the dwelling, to be emptied later into the midden heap at the village edge. For more substantial requirements, a trip to the designated village area becomes necessary. Open-air arrangements with minimal privacy, utterly exposed to weather conditions, and the casual observation of others engaged in the same necessary activities. The modern expectation of bathroom privacy exists here as an unimaginable luxury rather than basic assumption. Personal hygiene presents the next significant departure from modern expectations. The morning face washing involves water carried from the village well or stream and heated over a freshly kindled fire, a process requiring significant effort before the day's main activities have even begun. This water, precious due to the labor involved in its transport, receives careful rationing. The concept of showering, standing beneath abundant hot water for cleansing and relaxation, belongs to a future so distant it might as well be magic. Instead, a dampened cloth removes the most obvious soil from face and hands, with full body washing reserved for occasional special circumstances. Hunger asserts itself as the morning advances, but satisfying this basic need involves complex negotiations. With unfamiliar realities, no refrigerator door opens to reveal convenient options. No pantry offers commercially prepared foods requiring minimal preparation. Instead, breakfast consists of what remains from previous cooking, Perhaps cold pottage from yesterday's pot, a piece of dark bread grown somewhat stale overnight, perhaps small beer or ale rather than coffee or tea. The modern palate, accustomed to consistent flavors and significant variety, recoils at both the limited options and the unfamiliar taste profiles dominated by coarse grains and preserved ingredients. The clothing available reflects functional concerns rather than personal expression or comfort considerations. Undergarments made from rough linen scratch against skin accustomed to processed cotton and synthetic blends. Woolen outer garments, while effective for warmth, carry distinctive, animal lanolin scents and irritate modern skin unused to such natural fibers. The multiple layers required for modesty and warmth feel restrictive and cumbersome. Most striking, perhaps, is the absence of elastic. All closures depend on ties, laces, or simple pins, making dressing a time-consuming process requiring dexterity and patience. As day brightens fully, labor beckons. Not the specialized professional work of modern contexts, but the immediate physical demands of subsistence. The medieval workday bears no resemblance to contemporary 9-to-5 schedules or climate-controlled office environments. Instead, daylight hours fill completely with continuous physical exertion, field work requiring sustained bending and lifting, animal husbandry involving close contact with unpredictable livestock, domestic labor combining heat exposure from cooking fires with repetitive motion stress from food processing and textile production. The tools available for these essential tasks offer minimal mechanical advantage compared to their modern counterparts. The simple wooden plow requires constant pressure and guidance, while simultaneously resisting the user's efforts through rough terrain. The scythe harvesting grain demands precise body positioning and rhythm that modern bodies lack through inexperience. Even basic cooking implements, heavy iron pots, wooden spoons, dull knives, require specific techniques and substantial physical strength to use effectively. Each task that modern technology has rendered trivial through motorization or electrical, assistance here remains a full-body engagement with resistant materials. Communication presents perhaps the most disorienting aspect of this temporal displacement. The constant connectivity of modern life, instant messaging, video calls, social media updates, disappears completely, replaced by direct face-to-face interaction as the primary mode of information exchange. News travels at walking pace. Messages to distant locations require physical carrying by designated messengers or travelers heading in appropriate directions. The psychological safety net of emergency services accessible through immediate electronic contact simply does not exist. Physical danger, once encountered, must be managed with whatever resources and knowledge are immediately present. Language itself creates unexpected barriers. While recognizably ancestral to modern English, the medieval vernacular contains vocabulary, pronunciation, and grammatical structures that render much communication initially incomprehensible. Regional dialects vary so significantly that travelers from 50 miles distant might struggle to understand local speech patterns. Latin remains the language of official documentation and religious services, creating additional layers of exclusion for those without specific education. The comfortable assumption that communication naturally succeeds more often than it fails no longer holds true. The midday meal arrives with minimal ceremony. Food serves primarily as fuel for continued labor rather than opportunity for pleasure. or social connection. Nutritional content reflects immediate agricultural availability rather than balanced dietary considerations. The coarse bread that forms the foundation of most meals contains not just wheat, but barley, rye, and sometimes bean flour, creating dense texture and strong flavors unfamiliar to palates accustomed to refined modern bread products. Vegetables appear in limited variety and often in preserved rather than fresh form. Meat, when available, arrives heavily salted or smoked rather than fresh. Preservation methods that significantly alter flavor profiles and create sodium levels far exceeding modern dietary recommendations. Water, the most basic necessity, presents surprising challenges. Sources remain limited to local wells, streams, or collected rainwater, none with treatment for bacterial contamination. The modern expectation of safe, tasteless drinking water available on demand has no counterpart here. Instead, most hydration comes through various fermented beverages, small beer with minimal alcohol content, ale of varying strengths, or thin wine diluted for daily consumption. These options provide important antibacterial properties through the fermentation process, but create unfamiliar taste experiences and continuous mild inebriation that modern sensibilities would find problematic in work contexts. The afternoon brings no respite from physical demands. Modern expectations of scheduled breaks, regulated work hours, or labor-saving accommodations find no recognition in a world where seasonal daylight dictates work duration and agricultural necessities determine task urgency. The body, pushed beyond accustomed limits, signals its distress through increasingly insistent pain messages, back muscles unaccustomed to continuous bending, hands developing blisters from tool friction, shoulders aching from repetitive lifting motions. Yet stopping remains impossible when community survival depends on task completion, regardless of individual discomfort. Social interactions throughout the day follow unfamiliar patterns guided by strictly defined hierarchical relationships. The casual egalitarianism of modern exchanges, where individuals generally address each other as conversational equals, regardless of professional position, has no place in medieval social structures. Elaborate courtesy requirements govern interactions between different social classes. Speech patterns, physical gestures, and even walking order on shared paths reflect relative social positions that everyone instinctively recognizes except the displaced modern visitor. Violations of these unwritten but rigid protocols create immediate social friction without clear explanation. The omnipresent religious framework surrounding daily life creates another layer of disorientation. Every significant activity begins with crossing gestures or brief prayers. Church bells mark time divisions throughout the day, calling people to brief devotional moments even amid work routines. Casual references to saints, biblical passages, or divine intervention pepper ordinary conversation. This integration of spiritual practice with mundane activities bears little resemblance to the compartmentalized approach to religion characteristic of modern life, where faith typically occupies designated times and spaces rather than permeating everyday experience. As afternoon transitions to evening, physical exhaustion reaches levels rarely experienced in modern contexts. The body, having performed continuous physical labor without ergonomic equipment, nutritional supplements, or pain relief medication, enters states of fatigue that modern individuals seldom encounter outside extreme sport or fitness contexts. Muscles tremble with accumulated lactic acid. Joints protest repetitive motions performed without proper technique or conditioning. The back aches for hours without proper support. Yet this state represents normal daily experience rather than extraordinary exertion for medieval laborers, whose bodies adapt to these demands through years of progressive conditioning, beginning in early childhood. The evening meal, while somewhat more substantial than other daily food distributions, offers limited comfort to the modern palate. The perpetual pottage, a thick soup containing whatever vegetables are seasonally available, grains for thickening, and occasional small portions of salt meat or fish, provides efficient nutrition but monotonous flavor profiles. Bread accompanies every meal, serving as both food and practical eating implement. Trenchers of stale bread function as plates, soaking up liquid components before being consumed, or if too stale, given to domestic animals or the poor. The modern expectation of meal variety, with different flavor profiles each day, finds no counterpart in ordinary medieval eating patterns. Evening activities proceed by minimal light, perhaps rushlights soaked in animal fat or tallow candles, that provide dim illumination while emitting acrid smoke and inconsistent flames. The quality of artificial light taken for granted in the modern world here becomes a precious resource strictly rationed due to the significant labor required for fuel production. Activities requiring visual precision, detailed handwork, reading. For those fortunate enough to possess this skill, close examination of materials must be conducted during daylight hours or postponed until natural illumination returns. The modern ability to extend productive time indefinitely through artificial lighting does not exist. The decrease in visible activity does not indicate corresponding increase in leisure, as modern patterns might suggest. Instead, evening hours fill with necessary work suited to limited lighting, food preparation for the following day, mending of garments or tools, processing of materials like wool through spinning or carding, and similar tasks that maintain household function. True, leisure, activity undertaken purely for pleasure without productive purpose, occupies minimal time in ordinary medieval life. The modern concept of free time as a substantial daily allocation has no meaningful counterpart in this world of continuous necessary labor. Social connections during evening hours follow patterns optimized for the physical realities of limited light and heating resources. Multiple families might gather in a single dwelling during winter months, sharing a single fire for warmth and light, while simultaneously distributing the labor of fuel collection across more individuals. Conversations flow without electronic interruptions or background media distractions, creating deeper engagement, but also requiring social skills seldom developed in modern contexts. The ability to participate in extended face-to-face interaction without digital mediation or escape options. Sleep arrangements create another significant departure from modern expectations of comfort and privacy. The concept of dedicated bedrooms for individual family members exists only among the wealthiest households. Instead, sleeping spaces typically involve shared pallets or platform areas, with multiple family members occupying the same general space, often alongside any livestock brought inside for security or additional warmth during colder months. The modern expectation of a private room with an individual bed maintained at comfortable temperature regardless of external conditions, represents unimaginable luxury rather than basic assumption. The darkness of night itself presents unfamiliar characteristics to modern sensibilities. Without light pollution from artificial sources, true darkness descends with comprehensive totality unknown in contemporary developed regions. Stars appear with extraordinary abundance and clarity. The moon, when present, provides meaningful illumination that genuinely affects nighttime visibility and activity possibilities. This dramatic distinction between day and night creates psychological rhythms and limitations entirely different from the artificially illuminated modern experience, where darkness never truly arrives with full natural force. Health concerns pervade every aspect of medieval existence in ways modern individuals rarely consider. Minor injuries, small cuts, slight burns, twisted ankles receive minimal treatment beyond basic herbal applications and rest when labor requirements permit. The germ theory of disease hasn't been formulated, leaving preventative hygiene focused on humoral balance rather than bacterial contamination. Chronic pain from untreated conditions becomes a normalized background experience rather than a medical emergency. The constant presence of young death from what modern medicine would consider treatable conditions creates a fundamentally different relationship with mortality. Dental discomfort represents one of the most immediately noticeable physical differences between medieval and modern experience. Without fluoride treatments, regular professional cleaning, or effective pain management, dental issues progress from minor sensitivity to significant pain to eventual tooth loss as standard life progression. By middle age, many individuals have lost numerous teeth, altering everything from speech patterns to food choices to facial appearance. The consistent low-grade pain from dental inflammation becomes simply another aspect of ordinary physical existence, managed through herbal preparations with limited effectiveness. The sensory landscape of medieval life contains elements entirely absent from modern experience. Church bells provide acoustic markers dividing the day into prayer periods. Animals integrated throughout living spaces contribute constant auditory and olfactory components to everyday awareness. Wood smoke permeates clothing, hair, and dwelling, interiors with a persistent scent. Human bodies, washed infrequently by modern standards, carry distinctive odor profiles considered entirely normal rather than problematic. These sensory elements, while initially jarring to modern perception, simply constitute the unremarked background of medieval sensory existence. Information access presents perhaps the most profound difference between medieval and contemporary experience. The modern individual typically carries in a single pocket device access to more information than existed in all medieval libraries combined. Questions that modern people resolve through immediate internet searches, weather predictions, historical facts, geographical directions, medical symptoms, must instead be addressed through direct observation, community knowledge transmission, or rare access to written texts. The psychological security of potential instant information access disappears completely, replaced by necessary comfort with uncertainty and reliance on direct experience or trusted community sources. Weather patterns direct daily activities with immediate authority that modern climate-controlled existence rarely acknowledges. Rain doesn't simply mean carrying umbrellas or changing transportation methods. It fundamentally alters what work can be performed, how food will be prepared, whether travel remains possible, and how bodies will feel throughout the day. Temperature fluctuations don't trigger thermostat adjustments, but rather comprehensive behavioral adaptations, changing clothing layers, modifying work locations, adjusting food preparations, and reorganizing entire daily schedules around weather. Realities that cannot be technologically mitigated. The concept of personal identity itself operates differently within medieval frameworks. The modern emphasis on individual self-definition through personal choice, consumer preferences, and unique self-expression finds little resonance in a world where identity derives primarily from communal role, family position, and geographical origin. The question, "Who are you?" receives answers referencing family connections, village associations, and occupational categories rather than personal characteristics or individual achievements. This fundamental reorientation of identity formation creates perhaps the most profound psychological displacement for the hypothetical modern time traveler. Medical emergencies reveal the most stark contrast between medieval and modern expectations. The simplest conditions treatable through contemporary medicine, bacterial infections responsive to antibiotics, appendicitis requiring surgical intervention, diabetic episodes manageable through insulin administration, become life-threatening crises with minimal effective intervention options. The psychological security provided by modern emergency response systems, the knowledge that professional medical assistance remains minutes away through a simple phone call, disappears completely, replaced by complete dependence on local knowledge, available herbs, and fundamental uncertainty about outcomes. Childbirth exemplifies this medical vulnerability with particular clarity. The process that modern medicine has rendered remarkably safe through prenatal monitoring, nutritional supplementation, and emergency intervention capability returns to its historical position as a primary mortality risk for women of childbearing age. Without sterile environments, pain management options, surgical interventions for complications, or antibiotics for subsequent infections, each birth represents genuine life-threatening danger managed through experienced midwifery and community support rather than medical technology. The psychological relationship with death itself fundamentally differs from modern experience. Death remains visibly present throughout ordinary life, occurring within household spaces rather than institutional settings, bodies prepared by family members rather than professional services, and remains interred in community spaces visited during regular religious observances. Children witness death as a normal life process rather than an exceptional crisis. The statistical realities of higher infant mortality, shorter average lifespans, and limited medical interventions create not greater fear, but greater integration of mortality awareness into everyday psychological experience. Seasonal cycles govern life patterns with inflexible authority unimaginable in contemporary experience. Winter doesn't simply mean adding coats or turning up thermostats, but fundamentally transforms available activities, food options, social patterns, and basic comfort possibilities. Summer heat can't be escaped through air conditioning, but must be accommodated through altered work timing, adapted clothing, and modified architectural use. The rigid separation between human activity and natural patterns Perhaps the defining characteristic of modern technological society does not exist, creating complete dependence on ecological rhythms that modern individuals rarely consider, except during extreme weather events. The temporal experience itself, how time is perceived, measured, and allocated, differs fundamentally from modern patterns. Hours vary in actual length throughout the year, expanding and contracting with daylight, rather than maintaining consistent 60-minute measurements. Events occur after prime or before vespers, rather than at specific clock times. Work continues until completed, rather than for designated shift durations. The modern expectation of precise scheduling, consistent time measurements, and regular daily patterns regardless of seasonal conditions simply cannot function within medieval temporal frameworks organized around natural rhythms and task completion, rather than abstract time units. Agricultural knowledge, understanding soil conditions, recognizing plant diseases, predicting weather impacts on crops, managing seed preservation, forms essential survival information rather than specialized professional expertise. The modern ability to remain completely ignorant of food production while maintaining consistent access to abundant nutrition has no counterpart in medieval experience. Instead, intimate understanding of growth cycles, plant requirements, and harvesting techniques constitutes basic knowledge necessary for household survival, with gaps in this understanding creating immediate physical consequences through decreased food access rather than abstract educational inadequacy. The relationship with animal life follows similar patterns of necessary intimacy rather than optional interest. Understanding animal behavior, how to safely approach livestock, how to recognize disease symptoms, how to manage breeding for optimal outcomes, represents essential daily knowledge rather than specialized vocational training. Animals exist not as companions or abstract wildlife, but as working partners in survival, sources of critical resources and potential dangers requiring management. The modern luxury of sentimental relationships with animals without utilitarian dimensions has no meaningful parallel in medieval daily reality. Material objects themselves carry fundamentally different significance in medieval context. Each item, clothing, tools, household implements, represents substantial investment of irreplaceable labor and resources rather than easily replaceable commodities. The broken pottery cannot be simply discarded and replaced through minor financial transactions, but must be carefully mended or repurposed due to the significant resources required for replacement. This creates meticulous attention to object maintenance, multi-generational use patterns, and profound reluctance to discard potentially useful materials that modern disposable consumer culture would find obsessively conservative. Decision-making. Frameworks operate through fundamentally different risk assessment patterns than modern approaches. Without insurance systems, social safety nets, or technological mitigation options, each decision carries more immediate survival implications. Seed grain planted represents food unavailable for consumption until harvest. Animal slaughter provides immediate nutrition but sacrifices future breeding potential. Travel for trading opportunities means temporary absence from protective community structures. These constant existential calculations create cognitive patterns focused on security maintenance rather than opportunity maximization, a fundamental orientation shift from modern risk-reward evaluation tendencies. As night deepens in the medieval village, the profound quiet creates another distinctive departure from modern sensory experience. Without mechanical background noise, the constant hum of refrigerators, the distant sound of traffic, the various electronic signals and notifications that form the auditory texture of contemporary life, silence acquires depth and presence rarely encountered in modern contexts. Human voices, animal sounds, and natural elements, wind through trees, rain on thatch, distant thunder, compose the entirety of the soundscape, creating auditory awareness, both simpler and more nuanced than modern acoustic environments permit. Lying on the uncomfortable straw mattress as this medieval day closes, the modern consciousness reflects on fundamental realizations about the distance between these two worlds. The skills considered essential for modern success, digital literacy, abstract analysis, rapid adaptation to technological change, professional specialization, have minimal application in this environment. Conversely, the knowledge required for medieval survival, practical craft production, agricultural timing, weather prediction through observation, physical endurance, receives little development in modern educational systems or daily practice. This medieval world operates not as a simplified version of modern reality, but as a comprehensively different system, requiring fundamentally different human capabilities. The modern individual, regardless of contemporary success metrics or adaptation capabilities, enters this environment with profound disadvantages, lacking physical conditioning for required labor, missing essential practical knowledge for basic survival tasks, possessing minimal craft skills for necessary production activities, and fundamentally oriented toward individual achievement rather than community integration that medieval survival requires. The typical modern person, despite technological advantages and educational opportunities unavailable to medieval counterparts, would face overwhelming challenges adapting to this environment. Not because medieval people possessed greater innate intelligence or capability, but because human development always occurs within specific contextual demands that shape individual capacity in environment-specific ways. The skills and knowledge that enable successful navigation of contemporary society bear minimal transferable application to the radically different requirements of medieval existence. As consciousness drifts towards sleep in this medieval night, the fundamental insight emerges with inescapable clarity. Human capability exists not as abstract universal quality, but as context-specific adaptation to particular environmental demands. The medieval individual, transported to modern society, would face adaptation challenges exactly as overwhelming as the modern person in medieval context. Each world shapes its inhabitants through specific requirements, creating people precisely adapted to particular temporal and cultural environments, rather than universally compatible across all human contexts. This recognition invites not judgment about superior or inferior time periods, but appreciation for the extraordinary human capacity to develop environment-specific adaptations. The medieval villager's ability to predict weather changes through cloud formations, maintain precise awareness of seasonal progression through plant development stages, or produce essential tools from limited materials using minimal technology, represents intelligence and capability equal to the modern professional's digital literacy, abstract analysis capacity, or technological adaptation skills, different manifestations of human potential, shaped by different environmental demands. As the medieval day completes its cycle and sleep finally arrives, this fundamental insight remains. Human capability always develops in response to specific contextual requirements rather than abstract universal standards. The medieval world demanded particular adaptations that modern life no longer requires, creating people precisely suited to challenges most contemporary individuals would find overwhelming. Despite our technological advantages and educational opportunities, in this recognition lies not judgment, but deeper appreciation for the extraordinary adaptability that characterizes human experience across radically different temporal and cultural contexts.